Alright, Chapter 3, Scientific and Institutional Review Board approval of the submission of the Human Research Protocol for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, General Guidance for the International Investigational Review Board approval of all the research protocol for the scientific exam on the research protocol administrative for the scientific ethical review before the official submission with the Federal Drug Administrator before the research initiated. Protocols may be shared with the Federal Drug Administrator for the draft of the consultation with the Investigation Review Board review of the tip of the cooperative planning and preparation incurred by the FDA for the ethical review of the performance and release of the primary and Investigation Review Board, also referred to by the Investigation Review Board of Record. Investigation Review Board names of the very institution included such name of the Independent Ethics Committee, of the Ethical Review Committee, of the Independent Ethics Review Committee, of the Human Use of the Committee, Human Use Committee, of the Human Use Review of the Commitment and Tax of the Investigation Review Board, Safeguard Rights and Safety, Well-Being of the trial participants in accordance with the Army Regulation 7025 of the Army Regulation 4038 with the investigator provide with the evidence of the current good clinical practice of training with each of the individual identified with the FDA Form 1572 with the Investigation Review Board will compromise with the function of the clinical of the Title 21 CFR 56 and 2 Title 32 CFR 219 with acknowledging ensuring for the compliance of the chief of the commander of the head of the facility with the which of the research protocol for the conduct of the second ethical review performed with the Department of Defense Research Protocol Headquarters level of the Regulatory Review Organization. Table listing and the title of the purpose of the documentation prepared with the on file with the before with the clinical phase of the trial with the commencement of the may be defined with the NICH for the guidance for the industry with the E6 for the good clinical practice for the consolidated guidance paragraph 82 with the reference investigators. Trial sponsors may include the human research of the protocol part of the initial new drug application of the initial drug and IDE submitted to with the FDA with the requirement of information that include with the initial new drug application of the IDEs are found with the Title 21 CFR 312 with the Title 21 CFR 812. 812, respectively, general information regarding the Federal Department Federal Drug and Federal Food and Drug Administration regulation, medical devices provided with the Appendix D with the regulation of the DRAC with the participate in planning review of the documents before submission and investigation review board of the FDA. With the investigators will submit the financial disclosure reports to state sponsors accountants in accordance with the Titles 1 CFR 54. Initial new drug and IDE or IDE records held by the DA agencies will maintain with the accordance with the applicable federal regulation, Army Regulation 25-402. 3.2. Approval of the Human Research Protocol for the Surgeon General sponsored by the U.S. Food Drug Administration regulated investigation products. Research conducted by the MTF and the DTF may not begin. Protocol has been reviewed scientifically, ethically, approved at the first level of the Investigation Review Board endorsements can be given. This is if the MTA DTF of the investigation conducted by the RMC over which the MTF, the DTF is part of the approved the MTF, the DTF, the commander of the RMC, the commander will research what will be conducted with the review of the AMEDS DC and S Clinical Investigation Regulatory Office 1608 Stanley Road, Fort Sam Houston, Texas 7823 450 55. Fort Commander, Fort Dark, Maryland 2172 to 9240. Review approved of the U.S. Army MRMC ORP in accordance with the U.S. Army MRMC with the policy requirements specified by the Army Regulation 7025. Submit with the FDA, do with the directive of the DRAC with the point of the initial new drug application and purpose of the FDA Form 1571 investigation of the new drug application. Clinical investigation may not begin until 30 days after the FDA receipt with the investigation new drug with the investigation divided drug equipment list the FDA notice of the sponsor of the study will begin research conduct of the bandage by the research development testing and evaluation organization either within and outside of the Department of Defense may not begin with the protocol have been reviewed scientifically, ethically, and approved with the commander of the facility of the research conducted before with the commander USAM MDA Fort Derrick, Maryland 2172 9240 for reviewed and approved with the U.S. Army MRMC with the ORP according to the U.S. Army MRMC with the policy requirements specified by the Army Regulation 7025 submitted by the FDA with the directive of the DRAC with the acting with as a sponsor representative per FDA Form 1571. Clinical investigation may not begin within 30 days after the FDA with the receipt of the new initial of the drug unless the FDA notified that the sponsor of the test has may begin. Approved by the director DRAC must determine all the sponsor responsibilities have met before the study begins. 33. Approval of the Human Research Protocol using other Department of Army sponsored U.S. Food Drug Administration regulated investigational products. Research conducted with the MTF of the DTF may not begin with the protocol. Have the review of the scientifically, ethically approved of the MTF of the DTF of the investigation conducted with the war with the RMC with the MTF of the DTF. That is part approved of the MTF of the DTF. Commander of the RMC commander will research will be conducted. Approved and approved of the Army Med of the DDDC with Clinical Investigation Regulatory Office of the 1608 with Stanley Road, Fort Sam Houston, Texas 78 23 4 50 55. Research conducted, research development, research design and testing and evaluation managed resources may not be designed until the protocol have been forwarded over the Office of Research Protection, 504 Scott Street, Fort Derrick, Maryland, 2172 with the 5012 of the review and approval. 3-4 approved of the Human Research Protocol of the using pharmaceutical. For the Human Research Protocol of the must be reviewed and approved with the Radiation Control Committee that established for the requirement of the Technical Bulletin Med 525 addition of the applicable protocol for the reviews not above. Radiation Control Committee with the May function of the FDA approved of the Radioactive Drug Research Committee under the auspices of Title 21 CFR 361-1. 3-5 submission of Human Research Protocol for the Surgeon General sponsor of the U.S. Food, Drug Administration Regulated Products, U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Human Research Protocol with the initial new drug, the initial DE application submitted into the research for the protocol with approval of the initial new drug of the IDE initial will be forward with the directive of the DRAC with the will submit with the FDA with the directive of the DRC prepared with the maintainment of the record amendment for the communication with the FTC with the Surgeon General sponsored initial new development new drug in IDE submission of the Human Research Protocol with using other than Surgeon General sponsored U.S. Food Drug Administration regulation products of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The non-Surgeon General sponsor for the other than the Surgeon General sponsor initial new drug in IDE, usually commercial pharmaceutical devices manufacturer will submit the initial new drug application with the IDE with the FDA with the response for the compliance with Title 21 CFR 54, 56, 58, 210, 211, 312, 314, 16. 610, 812 requirements investigators must have the name of the non-Surgeon General product for the following inclusion of the protocol review with approval of the process scientific review committee and investigation review board U.S. Army MCORP copy the research protocol of the current investigator brochure with inform of the consent form case reports and curricula vitae of the investigators or sub-investigator list for the FDA form 1572. 3-7. The submission of the Human Research Protocol with the response of the investigator responsible for the U.S. Food to administrate with the regulated product of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Reference for the glossary of the regulation definition sponsor investigator and the investigator concerned with becoming the sponsor investigator must obtain the written authorization of the Surgeon General with the justification acting such that the sponsor investigator with approval of the grant of the sponsor investigator will state still coordinate with the experienced sponsor of the office of either within or the outside of the medical command. Individual investigators may sponsor the investigation sponsor investigator for the FDA regulated investigation over the product of the DA with the MTF, the DTF, the sponsor of the investigator will fulfill with all the sponsors responsible, including applicant requiring all chain of command and scientific investigation review with the FDA approval. The sponsor of the investigators will submit with the initial new development, initial new drug application directed with the FDA with the FDA with the Form 1571. Clinical investigation cannot begin within 30 days with the FDA with the receipt of the new initial new drug unless the FDA with the notified with the sponsor of the study may begin, and the sponsor investigators will prepare for the maintained record with the corresponding to the FDA. Sponsor investigators active with the duty members of the civilian employed with the organization will review the CIRO with the sponsor investigator of the bank provided with an informational copy of the initial new drug with the IDE submission. A subsequent correspond with the FDA with the Clinical Investigation Regulatory Office of Fort Sam Houston, Texas 78 23 40 50 55. Commander of the U.S. Army MRMC with the will accept the American sponsor investigators for studies for the U.S. Army MC with a case basis. U.S. Army MRC MC includes sponsor representative of the organization with the need of the sponsor investigator studies to the exemptional circumstances of the perspective of the U.S. Army MRMC. Sponsor investigators must coordinate with the request for the director DRAC with the justify the existing sponsor for the function of the U.S. MMDA cannot be with the ensure that all regulatory required regulatory functions will be satisfied with the and documentation required with the sponsor of the investigator staff with the director of the DRAC with the required prior to the seeking of the commander, U.S. Army MRMC approval. 3.8 approval of the Human Research Protocol amendments according to Title 21 CFR 312.30b1 sponsored Semitic protocol with amendment describing the change of the Phase 1 protocol significantly affecting the safety subjects or any change of the Phase 2 of the 3 protocol significantly affects the safety of the subject of the scope of the investigation scientific quality of the scope of the FDA for the review of the change must be approved by the Investigation Review Board responsible for the review and approved study from Title 21 CFR 312 with the 30b2 with the 32 with a protocol change with the intent of eliminating with apparent immediate hazard. The subject will implemented immediately with the Federal Drug Administration subsequently notified with the protocol amendment to with a reviewed Investigation Review Board notified and compliant according to Title 21 CFR 56.104C with the Director of the DRAC with the amended research protocol amendment. The Surgeon General with the initial new drug with the or IDE over the FDA with the investigator must comply with the approved amended protocol. Chapter 4 Human Research Protocol conducting use of good clinical practice studies.